Elevator opens, the guy in a suit, I'm assuming it was a general manager, I don't know. But he pulling a couple of guys off the elevator, pulled me and said, "Hey, we just need you in the office here." There's two other guys in there. One guy looks like he was an old veteran. The other guy was a rookie fullback. And the old guy said, "Yeah, I think we probably flunked the physical." Sure enough, the guy came in with the suit and he said, "Yeah, you guys flunked the physical." And I was like, "What do you mean flunked the physical?" "Yeah, we just noticed some weakness in your shoulder and we just can't take the chance on having you out there." And I was like, "Hey, can I sign a waiver or something? There's nothing that would keep me from practice or a game with anything. I'm ready to go." He said, "No, we can't do that." I was on a plane back to Iowa City, back to Cedar Rapids later on that day. I was crushed.
Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
Today, we're excited to talk to Larry Blue, defensive end from the Iowa Hawkeyes, 1989 to 1994 from Hempstead, Long Island. Larry, welcome.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks a lot. You guys are doing great things, man. I was able to see some snippets of some other guys and Rashard Carter, Beef, Danon Hughes, and it's awesome, man. I was laughing the whole time listening to those guys.
Hilarious.
That's great. We noticed, too, that there was a pocket around the New Jersey, New York area that was really fruitful for the Hawkeyes back then. So it's amazing that they were able to convince you guys to leave the concrete jungle to come to Iowa. Why don't you talk about that first, about just that transition and just the first time you stepped foot near the Cornfields, and tell us about that if you would.
I owe it all to Bernie Wyatt. I'm thinking I was probably one of his top guys because he was out there every week. He was familiar. I think he had some ties out there and he was straightforward. I credit him for getting guys from New York, New Jersey to come to Iowa. He told me exactly what was going to happen, what to expect. One thing that resonated with me with him is he said, "You're big enough, you're strong enough. If you listen to what I say, come in here, go to class, stay out of trouble, and learn the defense, you could play right away." And I just took those nuggets and ran with it because it was just straightforward. And it resonated with my visit here. He didn't make things up. He didn't try to embellish. He was just straightforward. And that was the type of guy that I was looking for. I think it was the best decision that I could have made.
Did you know of them beforehand?
We had a guy from my high school, Hempstead High, Moses Santos. He was a couple years older and he was at Iowa. Defensive end, played the same position. I knew him through playing on varsity at Hempstead. He was a senior and I was a sophomore. When he went to Iowa and came back home, he told me exactly what it was. When Bernie Wyatt comes in, he's telling me the same thing Moses is telling me. So it was just a genuine message that both of them relayed to me. I knew of Harold Jasper in high school. He was a year younger and doing great things out on the eastern part of Long Island. We never played against each other, but he was one that I heard about. Fritz, we were high school rivalries. He was maybe 10 minutes away from my house. So we were neighboring towns, but he was a year younger as well. So I knew of those guys. Once I got here, I saw the number of East Coast guys and it felt more comfortable knowing that those guys are coming from similar walks of life, flying into Cedar Rapids Airport and seeing a bunch of cornfields, but there was a lot more to it than just flying in and seeing what I saw. Once you get on campus and start meeting these guys, it was a lot more comfort during my time here visiting.
Tell us about Fritz in high school. I'm interested to hear about that. Was he big?
Fritz was as big as he was when you guys saw him. He was a monster. I was a senior. That was the only school that actually beat us in high school. I only lost one game in all the games that I've ever played prior to college. And that was to his school. By one point, I think it was during their homecoming. So they played a great game. We played the worst game we could possibly play, but hey, they came out with the win. And he was an O lineman. I just had to figure out how to maneuver myself around him, how to make some plays because he was pretty good. Their team overall might not have been the best, but they had some guys that made plays and gave us our only loss in high school, which was crazy. He was tough. You guys saw it. He was so big, but he had great feet. And I think that's total plus for an O lineman. If you could move around at the size that you are, that only helps your situation when you're trying to block a DN pass rushing or a D tackle. It was fun to watch him, and he was strong as an ox, benching four something and squatting 600 pounds or whatever he's doing. He was a monster, and he was big that way in high school.
Had a full beard too.
Oh, shucks. He had one of those. He's already about 6'3" or so. He was always into his music, rapping, and all that stuff. I remember him being that way. But when he got on the field, he was tough.
Tell us more about Hempstead High School. Did you play a lot of other sports as well, or did you concentrate on football?
Oh, I was never one of those to just specialize in a sport. I caught the bug, and my first organized sports was in 8th grade. And once I played, it started out in the fall with football. First time putting on pads, putting on a helmet. I played a lot of touch football or tackle football in the streets. And 8th grade, I got the bug. And I remember a time when I realized that I love football. We were doing a drill, and it was one of those, half the team lines up on opposite sides of each other, and the one guy at the other end lines up in the middle with the other guy on your back, and they blow the whistle, and you got to tackle a person. And I went up against one of our tougher guys. I saw you look across and guys moving spots because they don't want to match up with somebody.
They're changing their place in line.
Let me get in front of you. Let me get behind you. Next time I'm lining up against Leonard Hugh. He was one of those local bullies at the time, but he was an animal playing football. And he has a football. We're about 10 yards away. I don't think they'll ever do a drill like that again nowadays, but blow the whistle, and Leonard Hughes coming right at me full tilt. And I think I closed my eyes, but I wasn't going to shy away. We hit each other, landed sideways. It was a stalemate. And you see all the snot bubbles all over my face mask. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this game. This is awesome. So that's when I realized in 8th grade, that's when it happened. And from then, I went to 9th grade and playing junior varsity. Back then, I was an interior lineman. I was a D tackle. I was an offensive guard or tackle, played both ways. And I got the bug to play sports. I did it all in the streets, but then it was organized. You could just go out there and have fun, learn the games that you played. I played basketball. My next biggest thing was lacrosse. I played that quite a bit, and I enjoyed that a lot too. I think kids should try everything. You don't know which one would stick. You try it all. And I was able to do that. And then football was the one that kind of stuck out at the end. By my senior year, I think that was the route that I was going to go. I loved the ones that I did play as well, the other ones.
And as far as your team, you pretty much went almost undefeated. What do you think was the driving factor in that? Obviously, you guys had talent, but was it the coaching? Was it the mindset? Talk about that success. So that's hard to do, especially in high school, right? At any level to win that much. Like talk through that piece if you would.
Yeah, I think we had some good players. We didn't have a large team throughout my time. Some of these teams now have 80, 90, 100 kids on high school teams, but we probably had about 30. It was a legacy type of thing. For years prior to me getting to that varsity level, we had guys who were animals. They always came back for homecoming. They'll address the team. We realized this was big, especially when we had a 40-game winning streak at some point until we lost Uniondale High School. Instilled in us that, hey, we're the Hempstead Tigers and we don't lose. That's something that we learned from them. And our head coach, Buddy Krumenacker, he always figured out a way to motivate us or figure out what would motivate us. He was good at yelling at you, but he also put his arm around you. We had a good team. I remember getting ready for a game. We're warming up, stretching, and Buddy came around to me and he said, we're number one in the state of New York. And he said, look up there. So I'm looking in the stands and there's 30 people out there. You know what I mean? You may get some students, a few parents, but for a team that's number one in the state, we didn't have that type of following. New York is a tough place. Everyone was probably working on Saturday afternoon. Who knows? You got to make ends meet. But I think we're spoiled also. And they didn't show up until the playoffs or championship. So he just tried to tell us to figure out what would motivate us, go out there, even though there's no one in the stands, do what you're supposed to do in order to win. And I stuck to the message of, I'm looking at the guys next to me. They were here during 2 days, lifting weights. I was with them. And I think as a team, we gravitated to that. It's about us, our family. And I think that was a motivating factor. You have great players, you have good players, but you have to find something that's going to motivate you to go out there and do the right things every day, every play, and every week at practice, watching film. You got to figure out what motivates you. And I always thought that it may not be that the stands are empty. Maybe your parent comes out there. What motivates you? You see your mom and dad or your mom or your dad out there. Or it could be as simple as a girlfriend is coming to the game and you're trying to make some plays for her because she's out there in the stands watching you. So you just got to figure out what motivated you. And me, my teammates did for me. I didn't want to mess up our goals. I had to do what I can do to help the team win. And that was the motivating factor for me.
That's great. I like the legacy piece and the kind of standard that people before you set. Talk a little bit about internal voice. Tell me about your internal voice. Were you harsh on yourself? What were you saying to yourself when you're going through this process of that?
Nick, I didn't want to mess up. And granted, I did mess up on some plays, but that was my voice. As a defensive player, you get the call in a huddle. That was going to tell you where you line up, how you line up, and what your responsibilities are. And my internal voice always went through those steps, what my responsibilities, what my reads were, what I need to look at to get my job done to help the other 10 guys on the field. And that just rolled in my head from getting in the huddle to seeing the offense come out and going where I needed to go, and then what I need to do while I'm there. That was my voice, my motivation, because I didn't want to mess up my area, and then it messes up the rest of the team's job to stop that offense. That's my internal motivation, because I didn't want to mess up those other 10 guys who are all trying to get to that ultimate goal of stopping the offense. That just rolled in my head constantly.
Yeah, I think people either it's a fear motivation or a negative can be that way as well. So I'm reminiscent about my own journey and how I would talk to myself. And I think that's a big part of being an athlete and that journey. You have to have that kind of internal dialogue and how to mold that and push yourself forward and get better. It's a hard journey, right? It's not an easy process when you've got to fight through adversity. Talk to us about your recruiting and who else were you looking at that point?
I tell you, it was mostly East Coast schools. I took a visit to Syracuse, Rutgers, Indiana, and Maryland as well. Maryland, I wish we played in college because right before at the beginning of the week, I knew I was going on that visit, and then he called and canceled it. They said they got their commitments, but so they were just moving on. So I just wish like some point during my Iowa years that we matched up against Maryland, because I would have tried to tear their heads off. I don't know who it was or whoever it was in front of me, but just because of that cancellation of the visit. But yeah, I went to Syracuse, Rutgers, awesome places. Indiana, let's start with Indiana. made the visit, and they stuck me with graduates as a host. So we literally, for the weekend, sat in a hotel, in a apartment, one of the guys' apartment with their girlfriends, and we're recruits, and we're just sitting there in an apartment. It was ridiculous. We couldn't even see the town. It was like, what am I coming to here? The best thing about it was seeing Bobby Knight at a basketball game with his antics and what he did during games. It was amazing. Other than that, I was sitting in an apartment, so it wasn't that much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We usually do this.
You've been in Des Moines how long?
Shoot, I've been in
College?
I came here 95. Yeah.
Barnstormers. You've been there the whole time?
Yeah, I was one of the originators, the original group that started the
Nice.
Barnstormers here. And I
We'll get to that.
played that about 5 years too long. And then I figured I needed to grow up and get a real job.
Sorry about that. I was starting to
No,
get
it's okay.
sun ray in my face. Started looking, I was like, what is that light coming through? All right, go ahead. So yeah, Indiana.
Yeah, and so ultimately, of course, I didn't go there, but Syracuse was great. We had a nice little pipeline from my high school to Syracuse, and players, Rob Moore, Reggie Terry, Warren Stith. We had a couple other guys younger than me that went to Syracuse to play. And so I think they almost thought that was a given, that I was going. Their head coach, I believe it was McPherson, he acted that way. During my time, I had a great time seeing the campus, seeing some guys that I knew. But then that last day when you go to see the head coach, and then they probably offer you a scholarship or something, but he just shook my hand and said, hey, Rutgers is too close. Iowa's too far. You have to come to Syracuse. That's all he said. And I was like, okay, thanks, coach. So that ended up not happening because that rubbed me the wrong way. But it was just, hey, you got to come here. Everyone else in your high school that we wanted came. It wasn't too much to that. And I said, okay, thanks a lot, coach. Rutgers was great. Every school wanted me to play D-line. And that's where I think naturally I could have played. I think I did things naturally at that position. Rutgers had a great D-line coach hunting me down every week at my high school, but it just didn't seem like it was a great fit. They were selling what was happening on campus. Their whole football complex area was a construction site. Nothing was built yet, but they were selling the potential. And I just couldn't get past just a crane in the middle of nowhere and dirt and cinder blocks. I just couldn't visualize like they could of what was going to happen. So that ended up not going that way.
Were they in
I don't know where Rutgers lit.
conference or something?
I have no idea. It was an hour away from home. It would have been a nice place, but every school wanted me to play D-line too. It would have been a good position for me. I think it was a natural position. I did things naturally, but Iowa came in and presented this defensive end position and really an outside linebacker. And I never stood up before. I was always on 4-point stance playing D-line. So it was something new, especially listening to Bernie Wyatt talk about that's where he wanted me to play. He was my position coach at the time. He felt confident that I could play a position that I've never played before.
And I'm sure your mom probably wanted you to go to Rutgers too, right? Being that close comparatively.
Nick,
Your family in general?
Yeah, my mom, she didn't know anything about football. She was born in Panama. So only spoke Spanish in the house when they didn't want us to know what was going on. They're talking about something. When they're talking Spanish, I know there's something they don't want us to know. She didn't teach me. She didn't know anything about football. I could have told her I was going to Finland or something. Great, let's go. All right, have a good time. She didn't know. I think my mom saw me play maybe 3 times in her life. She was a straight shooter. I don't know that game. Why are you playing that game? I said, I love it. But she couldn't care less. And I love her for it because she was straightforward. She wasn't going to go out there and fake it. She didn't know anything about football. Hey, enjoy it. Go out there and do it. And let me know what you think. And that's it.
How did Iowa get on the radar for you? Coach Wyatt knew about the program, had been there probably recruiting other guys and saw you. Do you know how that all started? And then what was the visit like when you did come out?
With schools in general, I think they tend to recruit high schools that have good teams. So we had a lot of schools coming through because we won. Colleges want winners. And Bernie, of course, had Moses Santos that came a couple years before. He had a nice relationship with our high school coach who would provide to him what guys had the skill set and mentality to play at that level. Bernie took it from there. He watched film and he talked about what I did naturally, using my hands, moving my feet, things like that, that resulted in me being a D1 type of guy. Back then, starting eighth grade, I used my hands naturally. I wasn't coached that way. Hey, if I could do this and twist this guy, I could get to places where I want to go. And I think that's how it happened. Bernie was just the right person, the right mentality, wasn't a yeller. He just came out there and said, hey, you could play for me right now. I got guys at Iowa right now who aren't doing what I say. That kind of stuck in my head. I said, what else can you do? You listen to your coach and you go out there and do what he coaches you to do. There's no way you should not be on the field. So it's just simple. To me, it was that was my mentality. And when he was trying to get another guy on our team, the linebacker, he ended up going to Syracuse, Reggie Terry. He was genuine and told me what to expect, told me those older guys weren't doing what he was telling them to do. Just listen to me and you could play. I was recruited after that. When I came to Iowa, it was exactly what he said. You had the campus, the facilities, the type of guys around us, the players that were there. Then I had a great resource with Moses Santos being there to reinforce what Bernie said. And it got me hooked.
Who's your host when you got there?
Moses.
Is it?
Yep, Moses. And we ended up being roommates my freshman year. I never lived on any other floor. I was always on the first floor. I never was up second, third floor with all you guys. I probably would have flunked out if I was up there.
We tried our best.
I tell you, I probably wouldn't have lasted up there. So I stayed with him. The older guys were all downstairs. I was loving that. It was great.
Moved to the first floor as you got older, right?
Exactly. Moved your way down, but I was there from the start. So all those guys that I lived with after Moses, they benefited from me being down there from day one. That was awesome.
Talk about your recruiting trip to Iowa. Any funny stories that were included in that?
I was trying to think about that before. What was that? Power River Company? Was that the steak place?
IRP, the Iowa River Power?
Yeah, I think I gained about 15 pounds in all these visits, but Iowa was awesome. That place was great. I had probably the biggest steak I've ever had in my life. And of course, we're there with the other recruits. And I went to a men's basketball game against Purdue. So I remember, what was his name? That big time player for Purdue. I can't remember his name.
But late 80s.
This is late 80s.
88. It was
Glenn Robinson. He was an animal. I was just watching him play, and he was just dominating. I think I still won the game, if I'm not mistaken, because we had a pretty good team back then, too. I think BJ was on that team, BJ Armstrong, and Gamble, I believe, was on that team as well, and AC Earl, I think, might have been on that team. So they had a good team as well, but just the environment, Carver, place was packed, and we're sitting on the floor, and Hayden Fry is right there as well. They acknowledge him, and it was just something that I'd never seen before. I'd never been in an arena that was so intimate because everyone's pretty much on you, and the crowd was crazy. I said, man, this is awesome. This is where I want to be. When I'm sitting there watching the game, I'm like VIP sitting on the floor. Seeing these guys, I was hooked. I just knew.
That is a great spot to watch a game. I grew up like an hour from Iowa City, so we would get down to all the games. They'd invite us for a game. We're like, yeah, for sure. With the recruiting trips too, right? 5 or 6 of those games, and some really exciting games, some great talent. I think I remember Calbert Cheney and the Fab Five. So it was really a great spot to go watch these guys play. Yeah.
Hurley, you were in Iowa City, so
Yep.
you probably went to multiple games.
Wrestling and women's basketball.
I'm in New York. We only had that one shot, that one game. So you guys had multiple experiences, but yeah, that one game had me hooked. All we needed was Hayden Fry to come to my house and close the deal. He was a closer. He came to my high school and, hey, I want to meet your mom. And, after school, we're going to come to your house. I walked home. I lived about 5 minutes from my high school, and Hayden Fry was in his car. He had a driver, and he just rode in his car with me all the way home, just talking through the window. And he couldn't, because of NCAA rules, I couldn't ride in the car.
Oh,
So
Oh,
I had
wow.
to,
Yeah.
yes, the car's going 5 miles per hour. I'm walking home, and he's just talking to me through the window as we go along to get to my house. That was just the funniest thing. He wasn't concerned about any type of traffic coming or anything. He was just, hey, we're going to stay right here with you and head to your house. I was like, okay, awesome. But yeah, he came into the house, sat at the dining room table, and my mom is sitting there, his cowboy boots, cowboy hat, and that Texas twang he had, and just wooed my mom. My mom is a straight shooter, hard-nosed. Some of those movies where a guy or a gal, they're smitten with each other. That's how my mom was. I could not believe it. I was like, who's this woman that I'm sitting next to here? What is going on here? He's talking about the experience at Iowa, and he's going to get a great education. He's going to play some big time football, and the football part. I think my mom was just mesmerized by his Texas accent, that drawl that he had. And obviously she's never interacted with someone from Texas with an accent like that. I haven't either, but she was just smitten. And I could not believe what I was experiencing next to her. He gave us those nuggets about Iowa and football and school and environment and all that type of stuff. And then at the end, we'll love for him to come here. We'll take care of him throughout his years. She turned to me and said, hey, you're going to go. Just tell him you're going to go right now. And I'm like, 4 more visits to go. But she was right. She was right. But just tell him right now. Tell him you're going to go. I never talked to my mom about these choices.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just take him home with you.
Yeah.
Just take him right. Yeah.
I already packed his bags.
His bag right now. I'll take him right now. She was right.
That's hilarious.
Let's dive into your first year at Iowa, unless you have any more high school that you want to talk about. Tell us about your first year, the transition, your mindset going into the program and that, being a freshman and what all that entailed and how you thought about that.
Nick, I realized this was for real when I got here about a week before camp started. They stuck me with Danon Hughes and Leroy Smith. One day, met them and staying at their place, and they say, hey, we're going to take a jog over to the complex and work out. I said, oh, okay. Sure, I think I could do it. I thought, but I'm thinking the complex is, I didn't know my bearings yet. So I'm thinking it's probably a 5-block jog or something. They were on the east side of the city. It was beyond downtown, like west of the Ped Mall. There's a bunch of apartments where a lot of students were, and we were jogging. It was ridiculous. There was some jogging in front of me, and I'm dying. I'm like, not even halfway through. I thought we were just going across the street, but we're running down Burlington, I think that goes up and splits Slater and Reno, right? Is that?
Yep.
I think so.
Main Street. And I'm dying. So they notice, and they're ahead of me, and they're talking and laughing, and I'm dying. I couldn't talk to anyone. And they noticed I was struggling, so we stopped, and he said, catch your breath, and we'll get back going in about a minute or two. As we got to Slater, they realized that's a little steep trek up there to those dorms. By then, I was cooked. I was like, okay, they're going to look back, and I'm going to be on the grass, passed out. That's when I realized this is for real, because they were barely breathing hard. I did a lot of things in high school to prepare to get here. But the one part of that summer workout that I didn't do was the conditioning part. I did all the weightlifting. I came in there strong and thinking, oh, yeah, I'm strong, I'm ready to go. But I didn't do the running part. That was eye-opening my freshman year before we even started. Thank goodness we got to Slater and they realized that I was going to die. They said, hey, cut through here and get to the hospital. We're going to go up Melrose to get there. And you just go through there. And if you get lost, ask somebody where to get to the football complex. So I sat in that hospital, AC's pumping, feeling great. I crossed my legs and I'm just hanging out in the lobby. And I said, man, maybe they'll be around in about 10 minutes or something. And I'm just trying to recoup. I was hurt. Finally, I got through and I met them on the other side. And then we did a workout. I was a mess. But just seeing their preparation, they were obviously in shape, ready to go. The conditioning part wasn't too much fun. And I wasn't prepared for it. But I got prepared for it pretty quick. And especially when we start and probably lost about 10 pounds in the first week because of the two-a-days and heat and all the things we were doing. The level of competition tremendously from high school to the guys that I was practicing with. And it was pretty eye-opening to get to that point. And then, of course, you get yourself ready for that freaking 300-yard shuttle. That was a nightmare, especially that freshman year for me. Obviously, didn't make it, but it was eye-opening.
So was Leroy Smith the one that Bernie Wyatt was saying when he was telling it to?
Right. Leroy was such a freak. He came in as a running back. So he was already fast. He was strong as an ox and moved from running back to defensive end. I didn't think he grasped the position as quick as maybe a guy who's played the position before, but he was so fast, even if he did something wrong, he could get back to where he needed to be. I was fortunate to be on the opposite side of him at the other defensive end when he had that historic year. He led the country in sacks. He had about 18. He was a Playboy All-American, first-team All-American. He was everything. He probably took about 6 sacks away from me because he got there just before I did. But he was just amazing and a great mentor. He always told me, hey, you're better than I am. You just got to go out there and get it. And I always tried to listen to him, even when he was telling me to go to class, because football isn't going to last forever. And those are the type of things that I listened to with him. He was a great leader, great guy. Still talk to him periodically, and he was awesome. Hey, you might get a negative on technique, but you're going to get a positive for execution. You got it done.
He might have made some mistakes.
He got it done. And it's funny because John Hartley, he was, after Leroy was gone, he played on the opposite side of me as well. And he always used to say Leroy was doing things wrong. But hey, he was doing a lot right. So he was amazing to watch. Yeah, he might not have gotten that defensive call, but you couldn't tell.
That's great.
You had mentioned when Leroy broke a record and he celebrated, but he got sick. What was that story with
Leroy? This is every game, Brian. At the beginning of the game, we're in the huddle, and bullets are flying. We're out there, and Leroy would throw up after every play, like in the first quarter. I don't know if he drank too much water prior to, because they always told you got to hydrate 48 hours before games, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if he was just drinking gallons of water. I don't know. But he would throw up nothing but water after every play. We're in the huddle, and he's throwing up in the huddle after he made a big play, made a sack or something. And I'm like, Lee, are you okay, man? He said, oh, yeah, man, my stomach is just in knots. I said, okay, you sure? But then he'll go and get another sack. He gets it out, he makes a play, and then he throws up again. It was just a running thing that I just knew was coming every game, every play, every first quarter. That was his thing. He just had a nervous stomach, and that was his thing. If he didn't throw up, there was something wrong. because he was just nervous, but he made plays. He was fun to watch and fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, if he knew the plays and didn't get sick, like I couldn't imagine what he would have been. Hear that he was that good that he could just overcome all those things. That's wild.
Yeah, it was amazing to watch, be a part of. He was something else, and I'm glad that I got that year. That was my sophomore year, his senior year, where he just went nuts on the stat board, and I was glad to be a part of it, and hopefully helped him get some sacks by coming on the other side and bracketing that quarterback so he could get there and make the plays that he made. It was fun.
Yeah, that was a 91 season, right? The
91
holiday.
ended up 10-1, went
Yep.
to the Holiday Bowl. I think Iowa we only lost to Michigan, and Iowa was tied into the Holiday Bowl. I think we could have went to some bigger bowl or something, but we ended up going there, and it was a great game. I think it was the last tie in college football, which is wild. You just feel an empty feeling after that game when no one won. It was nuts.
That was, and then I think he said that's probably the winningest team because of the tie, and no other school or no other team, I think, has ended just one loss,
Right.
at
I
least
think
in
so. Yeah,
modern football time.
we had a good time, made plays, and Lee was there doing his thing. Matt Rogers was throwing the ball around the place. Danon was doing his thing, and we had a fun team that year. I was glad to be a part. John Hartley was out there too, and running around. It was a fun year to be a part of.
I was just going to follow back to the second year. So 89 season, you play as a freshman. Going into your sophomore year, you got hurt. So just tell us about how did you know you're going to play or start playing? Did Nick had the same thing, playing in his true freshman year and juggle college and playing time. Maybe
Sure,
talk
Nick
about
looked
that a
like he
little
could.
bit.
He looks like he could play right now. His neck is wide, and what are you, a triathlete or something?
No,
Jeez,
I walk and I surf some. I think it's just genetics. I think
surfing. Oh,
I'm
cool.
a three technique though. I got to have my hand on the ground. I think I'm definitely that size.
That's awesome.
Well, my question was going to be your transition from being down and having your hand down to standing up, how that was as well. So
Yeah, I played my freshman year. I tell you, it was just like Bernie Wyatt said. When you come in as a freshman and you start in practices and you're going through drills, all the freshman guys are in the back of the line. So we're watching the older guys go through the drills first. So I'm always stepping out of the line to see what those guys are doing. And if they're doing it right, I'm going to do that. If they're not, then I got to figure out what I need to do, listen to the coach, and do the things that's correct. And you start at the bottom of the depth chart. And as I started doing the drills and I'm seeing these guys doing things wrong, when it was my turn and the other younger guys, Doug Laufenberg, Jeff Andrews, that came in with me, just go up there and do the things right. We just started moving up in the depth chart because those guys weren't doing it. And it just baffled me. Bernie's so calm, almost a mob boss or something, had that calm but stern conversation with you right on the field. Did I tell you to do that? No, coach. So why did you do it? I don't know, coach. The next depth chart, you move up. I ended up being, as a true freshman, second to Moses Santos. The first game, I'm second string, I'm preparing to play. These older guys are behind me now, watching me go through drills and go through the things that he asked us to do and do it correctly. And that made it was weird. And they were great about it. It was just funny to be an 18-year-old and these 21, 22-year-olds are no longer in that rotation. So it was interesting in that way. And I think I saw Danon's piece with you guys, and he talked about being on a scout team and maybe hawk hitters and things like that. I never played in a hawk hitter, which was awesome. And so I'd like to brag about that. I never played in a hawk hitter. I was on scout team for about 1 week during preseason camp, and I never looked back. And I just like to brag about that a little bit with Danon because he was talking about all these guys. We've been through the wars and scout team. And I said, I've never been on a scout team. I don't know what the guy's talking about.
I skipped that stuff. Right?
I'm like, what
That's
scout
too good.
team? What is that? I've never been in there. Never been a part of that.
Hawk hitters didn't look like that much fun either, so I don't think it missed much. Yeah.
We're lined up on the sidelines, the guys who were playing that weekend, and we're watching those guys go out there and bang heads and cheer them on, of course, because it's a family. And you're just trying to, those guys, they're working hard to try to move up as well. And the Hawk hitters was a good tool to do that or get exposed. I'm just glad that I wasn't a part of that ever.
Tell us about your first game. You must have been super developed to come in as a freshman, right? Because most freshmen can't even just physically compete, let alone athletically, right? That's an impressive feat to start with. Did you feel like you were like, okay, I can make some things happen? Or I guess tell us your mindset or what that was like.
Nervousness, I believe it was against Oregon in '89. And I wasn't starting. Moses Santos was starting. I was terrified. I had the confidence, but I was nervous. When it got to a point where I had some significant playing time, I knew that I was prepared physically. Mentally, it was a little different because I don't know if I had a good grasp of the playbook. You get the call in a huddle where you got to line up. But as soon as you line up, the offense could be something totally different, and they changed the call from behind the defensive backs. So that could change my responsibility. So by then, that's when you start, oh my God, what the heck am I doing? What am I going to do? And then receiver could motion across to the other, and then it changes again. It was a lot of those unknowns, those doubts that was going on as far as being able to play as a freshman. It came as time went on. You felt more comfortable. Sometimes you even knew what was going to happen and you knew what you was going to do as time went on. But that was nerve-wracking in that regard because of just the mental side of it. Physically, I knew I was ready, just doing all the one-on-ones in practice, knowing that I could play against some of these O-linemen here at Iowa who were pretty darn good, and I could handle myself well against them, and I know I could do it against anybody else. So physically, I knew that I could do it, but then the mental side of things was sketchy as an 18-year-old being out there. And unfortunately, Moses Santos got hurt. I ended up starting 8 games my freshman year after he broke his thumb, and he was out for the season. And then I was in a fire. So it was just a learning experience, and it taught you how to prepare. As a second string guy, you know that you could be playing, but you got to prep yourself even better. And I learned that as time went on because anything could happen. And that person in front of you could get hurt. And that's what happened. I knew that this is serious now. I got to get myself together and get myself prepared for these games.
How about the next year, sophomore year, you got injured? Is that right?
Yeah, I actually came in from high school with some knee issues, but as a high schooler, you played the games and I had some knee pain in both knees, but by the next day it was gone. I never went to a doctor, but when I got to Iowa, it was probably a combination of playing at that level, pushing and pulling against bigger guys and practicing and playing on turf. Half the Big Ten was turf back then. And that kind of ripped my knees up more, practicing in the bubble and playing in games that had turf. So after my freshman year, I was going through winter conditioning and my knees weren't right. It was some terrible pain, and did some MRIs and saw that I had patella tendonitis and a slight tear in my patella tendon. They said, hey, you got to go in there and clean it out, fix it up. So I had a left knee surgery in April after my freshman season. And then May, I had the right one done. They said, hey, you could be back for the second season, the '90 season. And when it came around, I just wasn't right when the season started. I still had pain. I thought the surgery didn't work. And I was trying to get my legs strong again, and that was a challenge because I was in pain. They cleared me against Michigan State. We went up to Michigan State, and I came in there second string behind Moses. I rotated in for about 3 plays, pushing and pulling against a big tight end, and I just didn't have the strength to do what I wanted to do. They saw it on film and asked me if I wanted a red shirt. And I said, hey, I think that'll be great. So I ended up redshirting my second year. And that was tough because they had a really good year. They were the Big Ten and went to the Rose Bowl. And I just felt bad because I wasn't really a part of that success. I was on the sidelines. It was a learning experience because you went from a true freshman playing significantly to the point where you're not even a part and you just felt separated from the team and their successes and failures. I just wanted to be a part, and I wasn't able to be out there with those guys.
Yeah, I've heard that that's really difficult going through an injury like that and then not feeling like you're contributing. And like a lot of people really struggle during that time with feeling connected, rehabbing, and your team, especially like you said, the team had a lot of good success, and that could be really tough to go through and then try to stick through it knowing that it's going to be better, but it doesn't feel better at the time.
I tell you, it was tough. And you have doubts about that. Am I going to get back to normal? I just needed more time. At the tail end of the season, that 90 season, I felt good, but by then it was already decided that I'm redshirting and just chalk up this year. You just feel like not a failure, but you just feel like you just wasn't a part. It crushes you. And of course, I couldn't just go home and get a good meal from mom and just have her. She doesn't know anything about football anyway, so I couldn't even talk to her about it. But just go home and relax. You get a little bit more homesick because this is why I was here. I'm here to get an education, but I want to play some football. And I wasn't able to do that. So that was a tough year. But just sticking it out, having good guys around you. Had Dayton Hughes, Leroy, Harold Jasper, Michael Titley. I had those guys that were around to pull you back up when they saw that I was down in the dumps a little bit. And it was helpful in that way. We always had a great group of guys over my years at Iowa. It was just awesome to get to know those guys because it built lasting relationships.
I think too, at that age, you're not as mentally prepared for the injury and the adversity part of it. One of those things where, especially if you played earlier, oh, wow, this is great. And this is just going to be like a rise straight up scenario. And you do hit those paths of these humps and you got to push through those and figure out how to do that. And maybe don't have that experience to say like, all right, I've just got to put in the work off the side of the team, get to where I'm going to be a contributor. And you have that mentality that's, I just want to get back in. I want to help out. You feel like you're letting people down when in reality you should be going through the process of getting yourself physically, mentally ready to get back in and taking that time.
You think you're invincible. Guys used to walk around in the locker room and say, oh, freshman sensation, Larry, because I played as a freshman. And it goes from making some plays and having some success as a freshman. And then that steep decline from doing that to literally doing nothing. I'm on a bike, I'm on a Stairmaster, I'm getting that ultrasound thing on your knees. And so it was a learning experience, especially when you think that playing, I came from successes in high school and then having immediate success at Iowa to just getting injured and not being able to contribute. Mentally, it was tough to overcome, but you have to think about the ultimate goal. Maybe try to go to class and get that done and get back on the field as soon as I could to help the team and be a part again. So it was definitely something that I learned in order to stick around, because before you know it, you could be gone and your time is gone. So you just try to make the most of it and go from there.
Was it a hard transition coming from that successful high school program to losing a few games a season? You guys were really successful early on, at least. So was that a hard transition for you, like mentally, or that mindset of you're just not used to losing or being in those positions?
I was so upset at the losses that we had because I didn't experience it in high school very much. When we lost our first game, my freshman year, we lost to Oregon, and I think we were favored to win that game too, but they came in and whooped us. They were throwing the ball all over the place, and we couldn't stop them. Losing that quickly was something I didn't experience before, so it was just tough. I used to see guys disappointed in losing, but I think they got over it a little too quick when I was crushed. I think I had tears in my eyes the first loss we had because I was out there running around trying to do my best and we came up short. I think you had to bounce back from, and I learned to do that because I didn't have to deal with that before. So it was definitely something to learn because I didn't have to deal with it very much at all in high school. So that was something to learn. And I leaned towards the older guys because they got over it a little quicker. I think they knew, hey, we got a game this week, or just try to bounce back. And coaches are acting that way. They're really relaying that message and telling us that, hey, let's buckle down. These are the improvements. These are adjustments that we're going to make. But I was still steaming from losing the game. It was something that I haven't experienced. So it was tough.
Yeah, I think going through the different levels, like high school, we had some success early on, but my senior year, we lost quite a bit. Dealing with that, just, yeah, it stuck with you a long time. And then when you got to college, it was a little bit less professionally. Maybe you're just able to compartmentalize those pieces different. And I think at some point it turns in more to work, right? Of what do we got to do to improve in those pieces instead of that like raw emotion of just like, oh my God, I can't believe we blew that or we lost those games.
Exactly. You got to find someone or some guys that, I'm not saying that they're used to losing, but you got to find out how they handle it. And I was able to do that. We had enough guys that was helpful in that way because it was tough. Losing sucks. It's the worst. When you have more than just one, you got to figure something out and how to handle it, or it's going to be a weight on your back from then on. And you just got to be able to wash it away, figure out how I could get better to help my team win. That was a learning experience. We lost quite a bit of games when I was in Iowa. The first year, I think we lost 6 games, and I was crushed. The first couple, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the worst. This is
five
awful."
and 6.
Yeah, 5 and 6. It was full, and it was. I think we could have went to a bowl game that year if we didn't lose to Minnesota. The last game of the year, we could have snuck into a bowl, but they whooped us too. That's something that you just got to overcome quickly in order to get to the ultimate goal and improve.
That time must have really thrown you for a loop. You're like, what did I sign up for here? Today, I'd like to highlight the Damani Gibson Foundation, focusing on raising awareness of heart health. It also provides leadership and empowerment service for youth and their families. The foundation works with student ambassadors to spark important conversations about emergency preparedness, all with the goal of educating athletes in the community about sudden cardiac arrest. We are honored to feature the Damani Gibson Foundation as they work to ensure athletes and bystanders are prepared to save lives where and when it matters most. To find out more information, find them at damanigibsonfoundation.org. That's DAMANIGIBSON foundation.org.
It was funny because after my freshman year, Bernie Wyatt moved on and went to Wisconsin. That crushed me because he went from a guy that I saw just about every week in the recruiting process. And after my commitment, he didn't stop recruiting me. He came after I signed. He went to my lacrosse games and built that relationship and came in. He's right there. He's running the defensive end meetings and listening to him, getting better, him challenging us. After my freshman year, I remember about halfway through the season, I said, hey, you guys are doing the things that we asked you to do. Now you got to start making plays. And he used his hands, start making plays. So I'm thinking, wait, what do you mean making plays? I didn't screw up. But it's not about not screwing up. You got to start doing something a little bit more than just taking care of your responsibility. You got to start making some plays. And then after that year, he was gone. And I was crushed. I was like, oh my gosh, I learned so much in that first year from him. And then he went on to doing things that's best for him and his family and moved on to Wisconsin. And I almost thought, "Dang, can I head over there with him or something?" That was running through my head too, but you finish what you start. And I'm so glad that I'd even entertain that any further than some random thoughts.
The guys in that area we've talked to said he was really an instrumental part of their success. Do you think that was known at that point when he left? Everyone was like, oh, wow, we just lost a really important cog in the wheel, or that showed up later, or was that ever even known until years later? Or what do you think?
I think those guys that he brought in felt it. A lot of the guys that he brought in, he wasn't directly coaching them, but for me, he was in my meeting room every day. So I think it was a little different for myself and Moses Santos, but he brought in Danon Hughes and the Harmons and those guys over there in New York. Harold, he probably brought in Harold too. He got started that process with Harold and Fritz. And I think it was tough not to see him on the field that following year or touching base with us like he would. I directly missed him because I think I learned the most that year than I ever did. No disrespect to Coach Vuletic, Milan Vuletic, rest in peace, by the way. But I learned so much with Bernie. And I think we talked about it as a group. It was tough to see him go, but we understood. We just made the commitment to come here. We built relationships in that short time with some of those guys he brought in. We were just trying to get better and build from there. But he was awesome. His mentality, his straightforwardness, I think it was something that stuck with us and just made us, in that short time, better players, better people.
So he was a player at Iowa on one of the Rose Bowl teams, and then came back in this 1974 season as an assistant, and then one of the few people that stuck on with Fry when he joined in 79. So he has a long Iowa history. So that was pretty shocking that he left to go to Wisconsin with Alvarez. It makes sense, but also he's a lifelong. He was from East Coast, but once he got to Iowa, he'd almost been there his whole time for decades now. And hearing the stories about how influential he was, it makes sense why Wisconsin started to grow pretty quickly, not just Alvarez, but McCarney and those guys. But I think Bernie had a huge impact on that.
Yeah, a huge impact. During games, the defensive ends were in the area of the locker room in the stadium, and the D line was across, and Coach Mack was D-line coach. Bernie wasn't a guy like Coach Mack was. And Milan, Coach Mack, prior to the game even starting in the locker room, he was drenched like he was playing the game. That's how his presence was with his D-line group. They're nuts anyway. They're all crazy anyway, but he was just as nuts. He was soaked. And you have those khakis on, and his khakis from his knees up is soaked. Just from him yelling and screaming and motivating, and oh, it was awesome. Just to get those two guys to leave after that year I think it was a blow. But yeah, he was amazing. You need those type of coaches on every staff. One of those guys that doesn't need a microphone to talk to 5,000 people.
Yeah, right.
And that's how Coach Mack was. And then you need someone, a calming voice like Coach Wyatt, to motivate guys in that way too. I think you need that mixture in order to make that whole engine run. And we had that. It was tough to lose those guys, but they went over there, which makes sense. Alvarez was over there already, and I think it was a good situation for them. They made the jump, but thank goodness, because I never lost to Wisconsin. So it was fun to beat them when it was over there.
Yeah, we missed out. We didn't play them. We skipped over their two Rose Bowl teams, and then we picked back up and played them our last 2 years and beat them. So I don't think we lost to Wisconsin either, but we also got lucky in the scheduling.
Yeah, we played them every year, of course, and I never lost to them. And I remember one year, maybe the first year he was there, we played him in Kenneck. They used to line me up in the short side of the field with a receiver outside of me and crack me and try to run outside. After a play or two, I started to figure it out, and they started not being able to run over there. At the end of the game, during one of the plays, I looked over to him, and I was like, really? You got to bring a receiver to crack on me too? He wouldn't look at me. And after the game, he comes over and he said, hey, that's the only way we could have blocked you. I was like, okay, hey, I understand why you're doing it. It was funny and weird to see him in those colors, but it was also humbling that they had to scheme on my side of the field because they knew they couldn't run there. Some other teams were scheming for me, which is awesome. I say, thanks, coach. I appreciate it. But we got the win and never lost to those fools, so I'm good.
Yeah, you're probably not cool, but I get it.
Yeah, I get it. So, hey,
I understand.
Keep going. 91 season. You talked about Leroy Smith's season, and
yeah, he took half of my sacks, but yeah.
That's right, a bunch of stats.
Yeah, robbed me all my stats, but I think I ended up with 6. I became the redshirt junior then. Danny Hughes' senior year. At the beginning of that year, we played in the kickoff classic. Danny talked about how they asked us about playing in that game. That's a no-brainer. That's the closest to home we were going to get, and Dayton's right up the street from there. But that was an opportunity for my high school coach to come see me play, family members, my mom, in her 2-3 games she's ever seen me play, but she was there, and other family members, which was awesome. It's so funny because Dana and I were named honorary captains along with the permanent captains. I think we only had 2 that year, so we were named honorary captains along with the other 2 guys. I think it was Matt Rogers and maybe Devlin, if I'm not mistaken. And we went to, what is that place where they present the Heisman?
New York Athletic Club.
We went there. The captains went there. We're sitting in a limo with Coach Fry and the other 3 captains and myself. And we're going through New York City, and we're driving through, and Coach Fry goes, hey, man, you see all these burnt down buildings? This is where Dayton and Larry Blue's from. I looked at Dayton, and we didn't say anything, but I'm like, I'm not from here. I'm from the suburbs, man. I didn't see any burnt down buildings. But hey, man, this is where these guys are from. This is where they grew up. And it's like, I didn't grow up there, man. I don't know nothing about these streets in Manhattan. I don't know anything about it. But it was awesome. He just tried to figure out something to motivate us and learn from each other and things like that. I didn't know anything about those burnt down buildings. I didn't go out there. But it was fun. It was cool.
What was going on at that club?
I think it was a dinner with the captains and just promoting the kickoff classic game against NC State. It was a chance to promote the kickoff classic, get the word out, get people out, present us to the folks that were there, and talk about the upcoming game. And it was a cool experience because you had people that wouldn't see you play normally that had a chance to come see you. And that was my family. That was cool to be a part of. Dana, she had a great game, actually. I ended up having 4 sacks that game. And it's funny,
Wow.
I couldn't tell you what play it was or anything, but I remember the play that I screwed up on. And I still do it to this day, and it eats me up because they ended up, I think it was their last drive to win the game, and I screwed up on they ran an option back then. I was dialed in. I knew as soon as I got the call, I knew where I was going. I had to be, I had to pitch, I had whatever I had to do. And the one play, I took a step the wrong way. They ended up getting a first down and then eventually getting into the end zone for a touchdown, and I was crushed. I said, I failed this defense because we were dialed in. I was dialed in up until I had that brain fart. And I could remember that play vividly 30 years after. And it just eats me up because I think we were playing well. NC State was playing well also. And the option is such a hard offense to defend because it takes so much discipline. I had a brain fart on one play and they went in to score. But it was fun to just be there and be a part and watching Dayton do his thing. I think he had a couple touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. And I had 4 sacks and I had a good game. That one play just screwed up my whole celebration. But it was fun. It was a good time. That year, we had some games that we let go, and we ended up not getting to a bowl game. I think we went to Minnesota with a chance to get into a bowl game with 6 wins, but then we went and laid an egg against them. They always seem to play us really well. I guess you guys knew that too. It was always their bowl game against us. That last game of the year, even though they were not very good, they played us well. That's for sure.
I think that was one of the things that people didn't realize about the Big Ten is every week you had to show up and it was a dogfight. Even the teams that were at the bottom of the rankings and the bottom of the schedule was still a hard game. It wasn't like you're going to show up and coast and be able to just walk all over them. Fought tooth and nail. And some of these teams actually came to play harder just because you guys are in town. You had to do that every week. And I think talking to other guys in other conferences, they play 3 or 4 hard games and then have some walkovers. They could just plow through, which I think was a different mentality when the schedules popped up like that.
Exactly. It was tough, and you had to get up every week. And sometimes it doesn't go your way, but you had some teams we played against, record-wise, they may not have been too good on paper, but when they got out there, they were tough. Minnesota was one of them. Purdue was tough sometimes. Never lost to them, but they had some good athletes out there. So it was just, you had to get up, and if you didn't, you were going to lose. It was just something that I enjoyed. It was always great to get out there on a Saturday and play somebody else and not hit somebody on your team in practice. You get to knock some heads with somebody else from somewhere in the Big Ten, and it was fun.
Tell me about the confusion about your last season. People thought you were done after that season.
That's hilarious. I could say that I played in 5 different seasons. And you have 4 years of eligibility, but my second year is when I played maybe a handful of plays against Michigan State before I redshirted. That Michigan State game was probably like week 4.
Like for something, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that was the issue they were having because I played about 3 plays in the first quarter and then I was done. I played in 5 different seasons. My senior year, they probably thought I was done, but I still had a year of eligibility. Thank goodness. That year was wasted. Shucks, I didn't do anything. I was just out there for those handful of plays. I think they probably just wanted to test me out, throw me out there when the bullets were flying and see if I responded with my health and my knees. Obviously, that didn't work out. Yeah, I think that was probably the issue that they had. It's like, hey, you still playing? You're supposed to be done. But I had another year.
I think I saw a quote is like, Coach Fry said, "Great career," and you're like, "Hey, I got another year left. What do you mean? I'm not done yet."
Coach, come on, man, I have 1 more year to play. He said, "Oh, Larry, you still here with those curls?" Because I had dreads back then. You got those curls? When are you gonna cut those curls off? That coach, hey, he's easy to manage.
What are some of your other Hayden Fry stories?
I tell you, Coach Fry, he was not a defensive guy. So you didn't see him on the defensive field very often. When he came down there, it was, oh, what is he doing around? He doesn't know what's going on down here. But every now and then during the season, he'll come down and walk around and talk to us a little bit. And he always got on me about my curls. That was the biggest thing that we talked about. He was like, when am I going to cut him off? Or something like that. I remember in one game, I got maybe 2 offside penalties. We were blitzing, and I thought I knew the snap count. I'm trying to get to the quarterback, and I heard him say to Coach Gill, the D-line coach at the time, and I'm not a D-lineman, but he had to vent to somebody. I had about 2 offside penalties that game, and I was just trying to time up the snap count, and I got caught. It happens. And he turned to Coach Gill. I think Coach Gill was probably just closest to him because he probably should have just went to Coach Vuletich. But he went to Coach Gill and told him, why is he's always offsides? And I heard Coach Gill say, Coach, he's just trying to make a play. He's trying to make a play, Coach. And I felt good about that because Coach Gill understood. He understood that hey, you got to sometimes you got to figure out what you could do to get that edge. When I was trying to time it up, I was wrong. I was early, but he always had that high voice when he was upset, and he just get that high pitch and yeah, what's going on? Why is he outside? I was like, he's outside, coach, because he's trying to make a play. And so that's something that stuck with me with him because he never talked to us directly. He spoke to the coaches. And when that high voice, that high pitch was going, you knew he was upset about something that the defense did. A couple times on offside penalties, it was me.
He probably didn't know what was going to come out of Coach Vulitich's mouth either, probably, right? Because some of the things he came up with is left field. That guy.
Oh, that guy, man. I don't know how many times I was called slap dick or weird Harold or you're a peeker. Do you go around Iowa City and peek into people's windows? Well, he's asking me that because you got to look at your keys. If you're looking somewhere else and something else is happening that you're supposed to be paying attention, you're a peeker. You watch people in windows, don't you? I'm like, come on, coach. I'm going to tie a shoestring on your face mask and tie it to your pecker so you could play lower. You know what I mean? So it's just
that was the weird stuff I heard.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
strange.
I did some plays. I'll do something good and come off the field, and he'll throw his gum at me. He's chewing gum like 1,000 miles per hour, and he just throw it at me, and I'm like, I made a play, coach, but that's his way of celebrating. Slap dick, weird Harold, and slap me on the head or something. But he was a weird cat. He was awesome.
He was a strange cat for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you.
I do remember the gum guy. Just randomly, I was like, "What?"
Probably had about 40 sticks of gum thrown at me, wads of gum. In practice and games, I throw it right at me, and I'm like, oh, shucks. You're weird. But he was fun.
That's great. You brought up one of your down moments earlier. How about some of your great moments on the field? Do you have things you remember that really stick with you?
I'm telling you, those were the ones that you definitely, the bad stuff stuck with me a lot longer because you think that it would have made a difference in a game or a certain series. But yeah, good stuff. I remember my true freshman year against Iowa State scoring my first and only touchdown. And that was one of those plays I probably didn't know what I was doing out there. I was just running around. And Jim Johnson, he was a really good D tackle for us back then. He was older, and I think he was a senior when I was a freshman. And he sacked one of the Iowa State quarterbacks, and it rolled into the end zone. And I just saw, it's right there. So I just plopped on it for a touchdown. And that was a good moment, seeing all the guys come to the end zone and slap me in the head and all that stuff. So that was pretty cool. I had some good games against some good people, good players against Colorado my junior year, playing against Cordell Stewart. And I believe he won the Heisman, didn't he? I think he did, if I'm not mistaken. Quarterback for Colorado. I sacked him 4 times and ended up benching him.
Was it Rashawn Salam was there too? One of those running backs?
I believe.
One of those. They had a really good running back that year too.
I think it was Salam, I believe, at that time. I don't think I played against him, but I think it was Salam. And then Cordell, we went up there and lost by a touchdown, but I had a pretty good game against them. I got my sacks in chunks. Some games I had 4, 2, 4, 3. So I just enjoyed the big wins and celebrating with you guys and having times when I contributed to that win in some way. Usually in the defensive end position, getting a sack, maybe a big 3rd and long, and you get to the quarterback and play for the offense to come out there and do their thing. That touchdown against Iowa State was pretty special because I was just a freshman. Sacking a Heisman Trophy winner was awesome. I sacked Ty Detmer in the Holiday Bowl, which was their Heisman guy. You almost think that they got a force field around him or something, but was able to get to him, and that was cool. To me, highlights are just playing with some good guys. Over the years, I still talk to a number of guys to this day and celebrating their ups, downs, that was most important to me because that's something that I hold dear to my heart, to do the right things for my teammates. Celebrating with those guys when they did something well and being able to be there and celebrate. When I did something well, they're celebrating with me. And that was something that was really special.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a great part. I think a lot of those Iowa teams, the camaraderie and the fellowship, the brothership between the teammates that way. Talk about a few of the best or the hardest tackles to go against. Who are some of the people that you were like, wow, that was a tough game or a load to play against?
I thought about that too. In our defensive scheme, I always lined up against the tight end. So wherever that tight end lined up, that's where I was. So I was always mostly on the strong side of the formation. And I went against some pretty good tight ends over the years. The one that still sticks in my head was Kyle Brady. He was over at Penn State, and that was when Penn State was new to the Big Ten. We played them in Kenneck, and prior to the week of preparation, we're watching film and watching Penn State play USC. They had a guy probably played a similar position to me, and we were literally laughing at this guy the way he was getting knocked around by Kyle Brady. And it was like, what is he doing? We were all in a meeting room watching this guy getting bounced around all over the place. And you're thinking about USC, this guy was terrible. Maybe he just had a bad day, which everyone does. But come that game Saturday, I saw how big Kyle Brady was. He was huge. He's probably one of the biggest tight ends I've ever played against. And he stressed me out. It got to a point where I was like, hey, I'm not having a good game. I'm not making any plays. I'm not being helpful. I'm just out there. And a part of it was because of him, because he was just big and strong and a presence on the field that made a difference and had me thinking more than I should have been thinking in the game. But he was tough. Other than that, there were some guys that I thought from one year to the other, if I saw them in my junior year and then saw my senior year, I saw that they got better, got stronger. There was a Michigan guy that was pretty good. My junior year, I just had my way with him. And then came around senior year, I said, okay. He came up and we knocked heads. I said, oh, shoot, you got stronger. We laughed about it a little bit because obviously he was in the weight room. My junior year, he was a little smaller, something that I could have my way with, but it was tougher my senior year because he was bigger, he was stronger, he was faster. And that's what you want out of players. You get better from year to year. And it was fun to go against guys like that. That's what you're out there for. They put their pants on the same way you do. And you just got to go out there and get after it. And when the game's over, see what the results are at that time.
That's funny you say that about Kyle Brady because that's the first name that came up when you said tight ends. I think he was at the Jets when I was there, and he did that to majority of people in the pros too, so don't feel bad. That guy was a house. Tall, big, broad shoulders, could run. He still ran well too, which a lot of those guys are either a mix of size and they're just a little bit slower, athletic. He was a big human.
He was massive and just looked the part.
Like he got casted in a movie, it'd be like, we need a really big tight end looking guy. It's like that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No doubt. You got the job, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
You look the part.
Central casting for a big football player.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, the rest of the 93 season. So Nick and I started playing that year and we ended up in the Alamo Bowl. Do you have any other memories on that season? You were a captain, you had 3 captains that year. You're one of the captains. That's a pretty big honor. Anything else about that season?
Absolutely. That was an honor. It was unexpected. I wasn't that type of raw guy addressing the team during huddles or what have you. It was an awesome surprise to get named a captain for that season. And it was awesome that guys recognized me in that way because I wasn't talking to anyone. I spoke to guys when I think it was needed. And when I was named captain, it was a great honor. I was speechless, honestly. And then being a part of that captain group with Paul Burmeister and Mike Wells. Wellsy, he was an animal. And Burmy was smart and witty and a great athlete. And just to be a part of that was good. It was awesome. Yeah, I think I had a good year my junior year. I had about 10 sacks that year and made some plays. I think I carried myself the right way to be recognized for that by my teammates. And it was a great honor. Senior year, we started out with a new defense, and it was frustrating. And I think because I was a captain, I guess I wanted to rock the boat either, because during the game, when it was passing situations, they took me out and put in an extra DB, extra safety, which was Tex Montgomery. He came in on passing situations when we probably needed some pressure on the QB. I was double-digit sacks the year before, and I came out the game during passing situations. So it was frustrating the first few games because that's how it was. And teams got hip to that pretty quick. When I was out and Tex came in to line up in front of a tight end, Tex was a big guy, if you remember him. He was a good size safety, but he wasn't used to being in those trenches. So they would just run the ball his way and get first downs on third and medium. When we thought they were going to pass it, they would just get first downs. And I was on the sideline staring at Coach. It got to the point where I was staring at him and not even watching the play because I knew what they were going to do. And then he's chewing his gum really fast and hard. And then he'll just get back out there. I think after I was frustrated, but I didn't say anything. I'm a captain. I'm leading in the right way. But I think they were missing the boat on me being out. They ended up changing the defense mid-season where I never came back out. And they just scrapped that whole scheme and realizing that maybe we need to keep him on the field. It was frustrating, but they figured it out. I wasn't going to go out there and complain. I'm going to go out there when I can and try to make a play when I can. And ended up doing pretty well. I ended up leading the Big Ten in sacks after having zero after maybe the first 3-4 games. And it was gratifying in that way because I knew what I could do. And I think they figured it out when they did, and it worked out. We got to our 6 wins and got to a bowl game against Cal at the Alamo Bowl. And that was satisfying. We went up against a Cal team that should have been in the Rose Bowl. They were freaking awesome. Probably one of the fastest teams I played against. At that time, it was tough to swallow, but I was happy they got me out on the field more than just coming out on passing situations. That was frustrating to be a part of, but hey, it was good. Ended up being all right. We got to a bowl game, which we didn't the previous year, and went out the way you wanted to, being in the bowl game and competing and trying to win. We didn't, but ended up being just something that I'm glad I was a part of. Ended up being second team all Big Ten, which was good.
Was that the first time you got a conference honor?
Yep, that was the first time. Sometimes your team record may make a difference in that. At double digits in my junior year, sacks, but we were 5-7. It worked out, and I think I did what I could do my senior year to be acknowledged in some way. So I was happy about that. But it's just more so being out there and just trying to help the team rather than sitting on the sidelines. I was glad it got me out there a little bit more than I was.
That's interesting to hear you say that about the honors. I think there was, at least during our time, there was great players that didn't really get recognized. It was just because the other teams in the league were of national prominence, right? And so they were in the conversation, at least for national title. And so just the amount of talent that was out there was pretty immense at that point.
I tell you, some great players that we played against over the years, all the teams. they're tough. And those slots for those honors are just a few of them. So you go out there and you play hard and see what happens at the end. And I'm glad that I was able to gain one of those spots and to be recognized. And I think that was awesome.
Any other Iowa stuff before we transition to where you tried out for pros and then end up in arena football? Anything else from Iowa?
Hopefully, I covered enough for you guys. Like I said, I played for my teammates and I just tried to do the right things on and off the field to help the team. That's what motivated me. Guys have different things that motivate them. Whatever it is that makes you go out there and boom that ball 60 yards down the field or hit that game-winning field goal, or what motivated you to do that, to focus, to do it. I just tried to figure out what I could do to help the team. And that was my motivating factor, because when it's all said and done, those fans, they're awesome, but they're not there in practice every day, seeing us out there working, the cliche, blood, sweat, and tears, all of that, but they're not there every day. I just tried to work for my guys because they were there from day one. And that was important to me.
We're taking a quick break to give a heartfelt shout out to Greg Johnson and the team at Central State Bank. Greg's a fellow Hawkeye who's doing amazing work in the community. This isn't a sponsorship. We just want to recognize Greg and what his team are building. Central State Bank has been a trusted partner for families and businesses, and they truly care about the people they serve. If you're looking for a bank that feels like family, check out Central State Bank. It's always awesome to see Hawkeye alums making a difference. Visit them at centralstate.bank. Yeah, and for us too, you've given us a lot of great stuff. So I think it's more giving people a chance to reminisce and tell the things they want to, right? There's always those pieces that you think back to and the moments, and it's great to relive those. It's also interesting to me, you were older when I was on the team. The difference of the team we had, but then you also reached back with Danon and Jim Johnson to get that connection of, oh, wow, you were with these guys, and then you were the guys that went forward and played with us. It was an interesting thought for me to think about that connection piece of like, all right, you were part of our team, and then we came and did that piece. I think that was cool. It just dawned on me when you were telling those names. That was an interesting.
Yeah, it's a blend. Everyone's not a freshman when you come in. So you get those seniors, you get the juniors, and you're a freshman. And so you kind of interacting with all levels, all years. I was always trying to listen to some of those older guys because they know what they've been here. And then as you move on, the next wave comes in and you try to give them some type of guidance in any way that you can. And you hope that they take something. Maybe not everything you say may resonate, but you hope that they take something from you. I had a Bill Innes, you guys play with him, and he's at a low point in his years where he wanted to leave. I think he broke his foot, if I'm not mistaken, and he wanted to leave. So he came to me and we had a conversation. I said, hey, Bill, you just stay, man. You're going to be great. And you just got to push through it. You're going to get over this hump. And he ended up staying and playing and doing well. And that's a nugget I got from the older guys when I was younger, and I tried to pass it on. You hope they take a fraction of what I said and run with it in a positive way and go from there. So it was those different levels of age is something that you got to take. Hopefully, you hope those young guys latch on to you. Richard was one of them that latched on to the older guys when he was younger. And we talk to this day, probably every week, via group text, and something he got pretty quick by talking to the older guys and getting some nuggets. And then he was passing it on to the guys younger than him. So it was just something that we just try to pass on and learn. And hopefully some guys listen. That's why some of them didn't last, but just hope that the ones that did pursue that knowledge would take it, run with it, and then pass it on to younger individuals. It was awesome.
I came in the 92 season redshirted, and you look for guys that are similar to you, like Danon, Al Cross, and Jimmy Hartlib, and those guys have the same personality as me. They're not raw guys, but they're just putting in the effort, and they're quiet leaders. And I think you watch them and observe and just say, what are they doing, and how do I replicate that or make sure I'm on the right track here. So I think if you're smart, you are paying attention and watching the older guys and really trying to pick up and notice that because they're obviously successful. They did something right. I want to replicate that.
Exactly. And you kind of gravitate to those guys. And I think I did that too. The ones that you had similar personalities in a way, maybe attitude towards the way they prepare, the way they handle themselves off the field, on the field, and you learn from it. And I think that's a great recipe for success. And hopefully that's what I was able to share with some of those younger guys and feel good about that when my time was done. I did something to influence at least one guy. We had 100 plus guys on the team, but you just try to influence. If you got one, I think you did good. And you try to go with that and feel good about your time there. I was able to help some guys, and some guys it didn't help. Some guys didn't last, but I was fortunate and glad that I was able to do that and had the opportunity.
Richard, you were like, number one, do not sleep through practice.
Oh my gosh. I was literally in tears when I saw that. He was talking about that. Richard, yeah, he slept through. I was late to one of those winter conditionings. I think it might have been my freshman year. I just couldn't believe that I overslept. I think it was when the bubble was collapsed and we were doing practices or conditioning in the field house. And I was late. I felt so bad because we had to get up earlier the next time. I think it was maybe 5, 10 minutes earlier. Guys are upset about that. And I roll in there and I'm like, oh, shucks, I can't believe it. You learn from it and it never happened again. So I get what Boo was saying about him being late and then that big dope, he's waiting for the bus and there's no bus coming. I don't even know why they're waiting for the bus. Hey, take that jog through the hospital. They're waiting for a bus. These guys, man. I don't believe them.
But you said that jog almost got you.
That jog, hey, it started somewhere in North Liberty or something. That was so far.
Davenport?
Yeah, so yeah, it had to be at least Davenport. Right around there is where we started jogging. It was awful. But I'll tell you about Richard. He's talking about if you're 5 minutes early, you're late, 10 minutes, you're on time. He learned it from Coach P. Richard comes up here every Thanksgiving. So we always connect throughout the time. He's here usually for a week. We connect several times, get some dinner or lunch or meet at the local watering hole. And he's always late. I'm just telling, he must have used up all his early times with Coach P or something because he's always late. I say, hey, Boo, I'm going to be here at 1 o'clock. And he's a half hour late. He's always late. He's talking about he's on time. He's always late. Can't fool around with him. So I'm just being all truthful and transparent. Okay, he's always late.
Boo juice.
Awesome.
Oh, did you ever see the Boo Juice car?
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh. Boo had a car he called a Boo Juice. I think it was a Ford Pro. And it was a little car. It looks like it probably had about 15 owners. It was low to the ground. You felt every bump, every crack in the street. It must have had some springs loose or missing. So you heard everything when he's driving. One time he was up here in Des Moines and we were talking about getting something to eat. I told him, hey, this is a great burger spot here. The best fast food burger you could get. So he said, yeah, let's go check it out.
Yeah,
Anybody? Oh, it's awesome. It's best fast. If you ever, shucks, you got to check that out. But it's a great fast food burger. So we're in the Boo Juice. We're hitting every bump and I'm squeezed in the Boo Juice, this little blue Ford thing. And so we're pretty tight next to each other. I was feeling gassy. And not gassy out the back end, but a little burp or something. I was hungry, so I probably had a little gas. So I did a little quiet burp in the Boo Juice, but I turned my head towards the passenger window, and it must have ricocheted off the glass back to him. And he was like, God damn, did you burp? It was. So I'm cracking up. So I said, yeah, man, I burped by mistake. And then it came again. I had another burp, so I turned this way and he said, God damn, she burped again. I was like, yeah, man, my bad. We're going to get some food. I just need some food. So in the time that we're cracking up in the car about my burps, a cat runs across in front of the boo juice, and the car is running so low, it ran over the cat. And I'm a cat guy. I got a cat here somewhere running around, and it crunched that cat, and you could hear everything from that little car
Oh
and the
God.
springs, and it just crunched the cat, and I was devastated.
Oh no.
I was like, "Oh my God, we just killed a cat." I can't even describe how bad I felt, and I wasn't even driving. And he's like, "Oh damn, we just killed a cat." I said, "Yeah, boo, we just killed a cat, man. I got cats. I like cats." And at the end of that, we still went and got some burgers, and he enjoyed them. But we ran over a cat in that boo juice. He drove that thing. He probably drove it till it just died on him or something. I'm surprised you guys never saw that thing. But it's
We're gonna have to get
a little
a
Ford.
photo of that or something.
I wonder if he has to have a photo of the boo juice.
Sure, he doesn't have it.
He might have that thing in the garage down in Texas.
That's awesome.
Oh man.
So we might have to talk about that.
Yeah, man.
I'm
You
kidding.
gotta check in with the boo juice.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I love that
Boo,
little
the
thing,
name
man.
of the car is Boo. That's awesome.
Is Boo
We call
Juice
it
too,
boo
yeah.
juice.
That's great. Let's talk about your professional career.
Oh yeah. After my senior year, I wasn't gonna be a top pick in the draft or anything like that. I went through the draft process. I was sitting in an apartment in Iowa City with, who was it? It was Lloyd Bickham, Harold Jasper, Ryan Terry, Bobby Diaco was there. We just going sitting there while hanging out, watching the draft. I had an agent, wasn't a big time agent. I think I messed that up too, but I picked a guy who I thought, because I wasn't going to be a high pick, maybe get a guy who could grind for me, to be something like that.
Yeah.
It's probably a bad decision. But I went through the draft, got some calls during the draft, late thinking about picking me here and there, and it didn't happen. Right after the draft, I got a call within 5 minutes. 4 teams wanted to sign me: the Cowboys, the Dolphins, and the Rams. And so the Rams offered an amount. Dallas was less. The Dolphins was less. I said, I guess I'm going to Los Angeles. We got off the phone. He called me right back. And he said, hey, the Chiefs just called and they want to sign you. And they offered an amount, signing. I said, that's less than the Rams. So I go to the Rams. So he said, okay, I'm calling, let him know. They ended up almost matching what the Rams called him right back. It still was less, but it almost matched. I'm a free agent. So I was thinking, maybe thought about it too much, but I was like, Daniel Hughes is there. There was another Hawkeye there, I believe maybe Hayes. He might have been there.
Jonathan
So they
Hayes.
had a little pipeline of players coming from Iowa City to the Chiefs. So I was like, yeah, Daniel is there. Shucks, I'm going to go there. I went down that weekend after the draft for a mini camp. And the first night I got there, I was going through the physical, and I'm literally behind Marcus Allen. So as he's going to a different station, I'm right behind, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm right behind Marcus Allen. And he's ahead of me. My last college game at Alamo Bowl, I woke up the next morning and I couldn't raise my arm. I don't know what I did. I don't remember a play when I got hurt, but I sprained something in my shoulder. Rehabbing, went to the combine. I did everything except for bench. And so the the Green Bay Packers flew me out for combine recheck about a couple weeks later to check my shoulder out again. So I never talked to the Packers at all, ever, but they flew me out. They checked it out and said, oh, it's getting stronger. Good luck to you. I never heard from them again. I went down there and went through the process, the stations for the physical, and they tugging on your shoulders. Does this hurt? So I said, okay, good luck this weekend. I get up in the morning, we go to meetings. I'm sitting right behind Derek Thomas. Up at top was Joe Montana. He was all the way in the back. So it was awesome to be around those guys. It was like, God, dog, I'm here. I'm ready to go. Meetings was over. We had position meetings, throwing out some schemes and things like that. And then I'm walking out to practice. We were in an elevator. I was in there with Danon, and he was telling me, hey, this is how practice is going to be. Make sure you run to every drill, full speed, just get there, hustle, hustle. And I'm like, yeah, shit, I'm going to run everywhere. I don't care. We get to the top of the elevator opens, and a guy in a suit, I'm assuming it was a general manager, I don't know, but he pulling a couple of guys off the elevator, pulled me and said, hey, we just need you in the office here. So I went into the office, and there's two other guys in there. One guy looks like he was an old veteran. The other guy was a rookie fullback. And the old veterans, he was like, so we're asking, we don't know why we're here, why we're sitting here. And the old guy said, yeah, I think we probably flunked the physical. And I was like, flunked the physical? There's nothing wrong with me. Sure enough, the guy came in with the suit and he said, yeah, you guys flunked the physical. And I was like, what do you mean flunked the physical? Yeah, we just noticed some weakness in your shoulder and we just can't take the chance on having you out there. And I was like, hey, can I sign a waiver or something? There's nothing that would keep me from practice or a game with anything. I'm ready to go. He said, no, we can't do that. I was on a plane back to Iowa City, back to Cedar Rapids later on that day. And that was my shot. That was it. Never got a chance to see if I could even play at that level. I was crushed. I went back to the apartment with those guys and told them, and I was probably in depression for some time. I immediately called my agent to see, hey, call those other teams, see if they could get me in, but they moved on to the next guy on the list. And it was heartbreaking. That was it. I never got back in. And thinking about it now, maybe if I went with one of those bigger time agents that wanted to sign me, their relationships in the NFL could have got me into a camp. But that was it. I couldn't even tell you if I could have played at that level or not. And it was frustrating from that situation. Never figured out if I could play or not.
To talk to your statement about the other agent, that league seems like once the word gets around, you're tainted at that point. So I wouldn't assume that the agent would have done anything. Once they were like, oh, he flunked this physical, you get a label and that's what it is. It's hard to get it out of that.
And that's funny. The fullback that was in that office with me that flunked the physical, we were sitting there and we were trying to talk about why we flunked the physical. And he said, yeah, in college, my senior year, when I made a big hit, my right side would go numb. I was like, yeah, you should flunk the physical because you go numb when you hit somebody. The older guy, I think he had just a bad knee or something because he's played years and he was probably his first year with the Chiefs and he knew it.
Yeah.
I saw him with the Denver Broncos.
Playing. Oh, did you? Oh, shit.
So he got in. I don't know how, but he stood out because he fumbled in the preseason game. And that's when they zoom in on the person that fumbled and his name. And I was like, he just flunked the physical with the Chiefs. And I was like, how did he get back in? Danon, when I came back to Iowa City, called me and I said, yeah, man, the physical. And he said, yeah, pretty stringent with physicals. Like we're pretty tough on going through that process. And if you have anything slightly wrong, you're going to flunk. I was like, oh yeah, thanks. I'm glad you tell me that now. Now I know. I could have went somewhere. I could have went to the Rams and maybe I could have played or something and see if I could play. But yeah, he said they're pretty hard on physicals and you got to be perfect to pass. I was crushed. But I saw that cat. I saw him in a preseason game and I said, how the heck did he get cleared? But that's how it goes. The game is, you need the skill, you need the mindset, but I think there's a lot of luck involved in that too. Like the right situation, timing for you to get the opportunity. A lot of that has to be aligned for you to get out there and play. I couldn't even tell you. My mind at that time said I felt like I could play. That's the one empty part of my football years that I just didn't get to see if I could play at that level. And shoot, who better to learn from Derek Thomas if I got out there? Just watching him, I would have been playing the same position, which would have been awesome to watch. He was incredible.
That's interesting to hear your story. I would have assumed you would have had a really good shot at going on and playing a decent amount.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I could have got a little cup of coffee in there and at least give me some per diem or something before they kick me out.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I didn't get that signing bonus either. I had a plane ticket. That's about it.
The milkshake and a Hershey bar or something.
Milkshake and a candy bar or something. Legibly, please sign it.
And the guy with the suit, did he have slick back hair? GM Carl something? What was his name?
He introduced us, but after he told us what the results were, I didn't remember that. I just heard flunked physical. We're going to get you back home. I don't remember that guy's name. Probably slick back. He probably had thick pinstripe suit on or something. I don't know. My mind was gone by then. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now?
Broke your world apart. I know how that feels.
Did you go to the Chiefs at all? Or?
I went to camp with them twice.
Okay.
The World League, yeah. I was down there a little bit.
Yeah, it probably was him. I'd tell you. But you got me on the flight home.
Oh, yeah. No, just like a character. He wore these big suits and he just was slick back hair. He was like a caricature kind of guy.
Probably was him.
That piece, yeah.
Yep. Amazing.
What happened that led you to Des Moines? Barnstormers.
Yeah, I went back. That was probably April or something. Went back, and I still had one class to finish before I could graduate. So got into that and was working out. My agent got me a workout with a Canadian team, so I flew out there, and worked out, did well, but they already had a number of Americans, and they had a pass rusher veteran guy already. They said I did really well. One-on-ones, I was doing really well, but they had a guy, and I would have to have done something extraordinary to get him out of there. When I went back to Iowa City, I finished up my class, graduated, and then I was an associate at an elementary school. I know Richard talked about Barb and Vic. Vic was a school teacher, and she was able to help me get there. So I was there working with a couple kids that needed one-on-one support in the classroom. Then I got a call to try out in Des Moines for an arena team starting up. Carlos James was in Iowa City as well. Both of us took the ride up, and it was the quickest workout I ever had. I think I ran a 40, and I did a one cone drill, 20-yard shuttle, and I got signed. I wasn't really focusing on my position. It was more so receivers and DBs. Carlos was running around the place playing DB, playing receiver. He was probably exhausted after the workout. And then Kurt Warner's there, and he's throwing the ball around. So they had to work a little bit. I just had to run a 40 and a cone drill, and they signed us. So we started the Arena League here back in, I think it was 95. It's funny because I started with the mindset that I was going through, I had just started the state trooper process, the testing, and camp started. I was still going through that process. That made me my second phase, and you have to pass each phase and move on to the next. I would go to practice and either leave early to get to Camp Dodge for testing, or right after practice, Camp Dodge for testing, whether interviewing, running the 1.5 miles, push-ups, sit-ups. That was my mindset. I was thinking, okay, if I get selected to go through the state trooper camp or whatever they call it, training, I was done with football. I went through the whole process, and I guess they look at a pool of guys and gals that passed the whole process and then select the ones that they want, and I wasn't selected. So I guess it wasn't meant to be. I ended up playing 6 years of arena football, which was a great summer job, one of the best summer jobs you could ever have. Playing football and practicing 2 hours a day, flying to a city to play a game of football. At 23, 24 years old, it was fun. I didn't have anything else really going on, but I was able to play football. I was trying to think, okay, maybe show that I'm healthy, maybe try to contact one of these agents and see if they could, work me in somewhere to a camp, but that didn't work out. I played 6 years, played with another Hall of Famer, threw me a couple touchdowns during our time there. I played a little bit of tight end and Played every position out there, fullback, nose guard, end, guard, center. Played a half a season at center, Nick. How about that?
Wow, you went to the dark
Yeah.
side, huh?
One of our centers got hurt, and I think I was athletic enough and shouldn't have played center.
Yeah,
But I
right.
was out there.
Was it fun?
It was fun because it was tough. Center is hard. I mean, it was tough because you have a nose guard in front of you and you're trying to snap the ball and then try to block that guy. And of course, as a pass play, 99% of the time, you got to pass
Yeah,
block this guy who's 50 pounds heavier than me,
gonna say, yeah.
every play. But I played fullback, I played linebacker, I played DN, I played tight end, I played guard, played everything. And I think that's what kept me around because I could play everything else. If guys got hurt or someone didn't pan out, they'll plug me in somewhere. Hey, Larry, go play this game. But yeah, it was a great summer job, made some good money. And for playing football, it was a fraction of what you could have made at the next level, but it was a good summer job to figure things out. And after about 6 years, I just figured that I should grow up and get a real job.
Did you have another job at all in the off season, or that covered you enough?
We didn't have to pay for lodging or anything at all, Brian. Apartments were paid for, food was paid for. We had vans that we could use anytime we wanted to get around. Some guys had their own cars. I had my own car after the first year. We didn't have to pay for anything, so I didn't have any expenses. Yeah, like I said, I tell people it's the best summer job I ever had. Great summer job.
Nice.
Awesome.
I was there in the 98 season for about 6 games, and then
Yeah.
I would come to practice after they fired me and they brought in someone else, but kept me around because the kicker had to go. He already had plans to get married one of the weekends. So I kept practicing. I drive up from Iowa City to Des Moines, and then I think I stayed at one of those apartments. They just had like a spare room, so it was like a bed on the floor or something. I would stay there on the weekend and
That
drive
sounds
back.
about
But
right. Floor Palace over there. There's an apartment complex over there. They stuck us all in.
yeah,
But it was free. You didn't have to pay for anything. So that was the best part about it.
there was meal tickets too, or something
Meal
like
tickets.
local
So
businesses
yeah,
had
meal
free
tickets.
food.
I enjoyed it. And we had a good team over the years. We had a lot of guys went to the NFL, lost their jobs or got cut and still wanted to play football and they came and played. So we had some NFL guys that played and some guys aspiring to get to the NFL. And we had a good team over time. We played in 2 championships, lost them both, but we were there and we made some good money for quarterbacks, receivers, DBs. They had the most money. And some guys were making over 6 figures at that time. Kurt made a boatload of money, throwing 6, 7 touchdowns a game, and you get incentives for every touchdown and yards and all that type of stuff. They made a lot of money at that time. For me, I made a fraction of that, but it was still pretty good for 4 months of work. It was awesome.
So Carlos was there the first year, and then what are some other Hawkeyes that came up through there? Rodney
Berman?
later.
Rodney Shush, he came later. I think he came probably like maybe my 5th and 6th year, like towards the end. He played a boatload of years. I think he went into double digits with multiple teams.
He's like 12 years or something.
He played a lot of years. One of the tops in rushing yards or something over the course of his time because his longevity. He was an animal. He's a specimen. He still is. He lives here in Des Moines, and he's big as a house. And he's just huge. He's big in lifting weights and working out. He's just one of those specimen type of guys. He looks like he looked when he came in as a freshman. He was like 17 years old. But yeah, he played a lot of years. I played 6, and the 7th year, the team was going to New York. And I thought about going to just be close. They're playing in Nassau Coliseum, right by the house where family was. And I was thinking about doing it. But another team, Buffalo, wanted to pay me more to play. I ended up signing with them, but my body was failing me. I worked out hard to try to get ready for the season, but after working out, I felt bad. I felt like how I felt at the end of the season, and the season didn't even start yet. My joints were sore from lifting, and I was like, okay, I had enough. I can't do this anymore. Let me figure something else out.
What did you do after that?
Right after this, I worked with kids. I was a juvenile court liaison. I worked within a school setting with kids who were on probation and making sure school-wise that they came to school, did the right things during their probationary time. So I started doing that, and I did that for 4 years. After that, I started thinking, okay, this is a great job. Kids respect me, but it didn't pay as well. I'd started looking at contacting some guys that I knew, Lloyd Bickham, Ryan Terry, they were in pharmaceutical sales. I started asking questions, and Cliff, he connected me with some folks within the company to learn about it a little bit more, and saw myself doing it. Good job, a lot of autonomy, and made good money and talking to doctors and selling my product, and got into that and did that off and on for about 11 years, and sold several drugs, several companies that I went to, and I did that. It got to the point where it's tough in Iowa. I was laid off a few times. So I got to the point where I was like, man, I'm getting older. I need something more stable. So I was able to land a position with the state of Iowa. I'm a disabilities examiner now. I work cases for people who file for disabilities. I work it medically and do the medical development for cases and ultimately decide if folks are disabled or not. Tough gig, probably the hardest job I've ever had. Your brain is fried when you're done at the end of the day because of a lot of policy and procedures that you have to follow, but it's always something new every day, and it's a stable job. That's the thing I was looking for as I got older. I could have been stuck with pharma, in and out of companies, but I just didn't want that. Just wanted something more stable, and I found that at this point.
Yeah, that mental work is draining. It's not physically tiring, but it's the mental stuff. It wears you out.
I think with football, I'm more of a black and white thinker. This job is so much gray, and you could go 5 different directions with a case to get to the goal. I don't like that. Just give me a straight line to get to this. So it's interesting and frustrating in that way. It keeps you on your toes, and I just try to do better at it every day. I've been doing that for almost 9 years. It's interesting, but frustrating, but hey, it's never a dull moment.
Great. I think we covered a lot of stuff. Really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. You guys are doing awesome, man. I'm looking forward to it. I got that link, so I'm going to start. I listened to Beef, Richard, Danon, and gosh, I forget who else it was, but I got it now, so I'm looking through it. I subscribe too, so I'll be
Nice.
watching. You guys are,
You got
you
2
guys are
people.
awesome, man.
I
That's
just saw the
amazing.
number go up by 1.
I hope I did all right, man. I'm not that,
Oh, great.
storyteller like Boo. He had me crying. I tell you, he was something else.
Hey,
He's
it was
funny,
pretty
yeah.
good.
yeah, he's
You have a good
character, so
impersonation of him. That was pretty dead on. Get
that's
Yeah,
my
talking,
guy,
man.
man. I love him, man. He's awesome. Love you
Just-
guys. You guys are doing
Yeah.
awesome. Keep it up.
All
Hey,
right.
take care. Have a
Thanks,
good
LB.
one.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right.